turn to dust right in front of you. So if I have to switch internet channels, just bear with me because the signal seems like it's a bit weak. So I have my signal booster turned on, but I think the equipment here is so old. That it just can't keep up. So I hadn't planned on making a video tonight, but City Prepper, CITY Prepper, made an excellent video on how to avoid fallout. And that stuff is coming, fam. That stuff is coming. This argument between the sons of Jacob and the Ishmaelites has flourished to the whole world. Germany, France, America, Russia. So a group from the Holy Land landed in Russia and the plane was mobbed. You know, students at universities have had to be locked into rooms and guarded to keep from being mobbed. So, and I understand, I get the whole thing. You know, these people were in their homes and you know, anarchists broke in and decapitated their children and horrible stuff, you know, ravaged their wives, took hostages. The smart thing to have done would have been, since they control the food and the water and the electricity going into the strip, they should have just shut it off and said, well, when we get our hostages back, you'll get your electricity and water turned back on, you know, rather than going over there and blasting the whole thing to dirt. You know, I know that they're passionate about what happened, but they were also sending signs of weakness to the rest of the world by arguing in front of their enemies, and their government was all divided, you know. And we're doing the same thing here in America. If you look at recruitment videos for the bear country and for the dragon country, you know, they show rough and ready and rugged men going into WAR. And our recruitment video is a cartoon about a girl, you know, talking to her mother. And she's so pleased that, you know, they have pregnancy outfits for people going into the U.S. service. You know, that they have outfits that'll fit a pregnant woman, you know, and all this woke agenda, and, you know, come join up in your high heels and your pink flamingo dress, and we're just signaling to the rest of the world our weakness. And you know, Uncle Joe kicked this whole thing off when you think about it. That speech that he made about the U.S. not doing anything if the bear country went into the yellow and blue country, and it was a limited incursion that the Iron Eagle wouldn't do anything. And he essentially gave everybody the green light, to go buck wild with that speech. I don't know why everybody is so, so puzzled. So we had a very strong man in the WH, but he was mean and he made mean tweets. So he had to go because he was mean. We had 4 years of prosperity and peace, and now we got this total mess. And fam, when this stuff happens, it's going to happen in a single hour, because we've given away most of our armaments. We've given away, a lot of our fuel reserves. We've spent ourselves into worse than bankruptcy. We're like, okay, if you don't build those BOMBS, we'll give you this money, and you better spend that money on popsicles and ice cream. And Mr. Burns was supposed to make a very important speech a little while ago, and he gets at the podium and he talks about chocolate chip ice cream and how he's got a whole upstairs full of ice cream, and if people didn't believe him, they could come and see. No, that didn't make us look like fools. It's just a mess. And the guy in charge of our stockpile was stealing women's dresses at an airport and putting on this great big lipstick. This bald guy with this great big lipstick wearing stolen designer dresses. No, that didn't make us look like fools. So our open border has got a whole fifth column of young, very physically fit men from all over the world, from the Dragon Country, from Persia, Ishmaelites, all over this world. They're coming, and they're being deposited on purpose by our government into small towns all over the country. And you figure a small town, they have a sheriff and 2 or 3 deputies, and then they put 400 or 500 or 1,000 immigrants in that town, and the immigrants outnumber the people that lived in the town, and there's no way that law enforcement can take care of the people anymore. And they're doing all of these false flags, trying to take our armaments away from us, take the Second Amendment away from us so that we can't defend ourselves. And fam, when this house of cards collapses, it's going to happen very quickly. And like I said, City Prepper has got an excellent video on how to survive fallout, how to prep your house with a mud room and a decontamination room, because you're going to need to know that stuff. And young people, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you young people that were hoping to get married and buy a car and have a house and all that other stuff. You can still have it if you make Jesus Lord of your life, because what Jesus has for us, in the days and months coming, is far better than anything you could have hoped for in this life. And for you unsaved people, this life will be as good as it gets. And for saved people, this life will be as bad as it gets. So, and people know this is biblical stuff, happening. They just don't want to admit it because they don't want to have a sovereign God rule over their lives, and they think that God's going to put a whole bunch of rules and regulations on them and spoil their lives. So they want to be the Lord of their lives and live the way they want, and then give God the bits and pieces at the end, that kind of thing. But if you're not getting ready, and you're going to wait for that day when the stuff hits the fan, and you're going to go out into traffic and try and get past other people that are storming that last available store, tearing everything off the shelves that they can get, and you're going to go out into that mess, and you think that you're going to survive long term that way, you got another thing coming. And you young people, you teenagers, you should not be pressing mommy and daddy for expensive Christmas gifts this year. Christmas is for little toddlers, 2 and 3-year-old kids. If you're a teenager and you get a new sweater for Christmas for school, you should be happy with that. It's coming down to that anyway, fam, where people are spending so much on food and gas and rent that they can't afford anything else. And it's going to be like the old days. It's going to be like the old days, during WW2, when you couldn't get anything. You couldn't get coffee. You couldn't get meat. You couldn't get butter. We gave America's butter to another army, and then they fed margarine to Americans, because the people from the other country where we were sending the butter, they would not eat the margarine. So they gave Americans margarine and sent the good butter to other people. And that's the way it's going to be this time around, because Americans have sold off so much of their farmland to the Dragon Country and other places. And all of that food is going to go overseas when the time comes, because we haven't produced enough food to feed the world this year. We've only produced half the food that we've needed. So 2024 is going to be a rough year, and you should not be forcing your parents to extend their credit card for Christmas, just because you want a new Xbox or a PlayStation or something like that. What's the good of having that if your family's not going to have enough food, or they're not going to have electricity or gas to keep themselves warm this winter? You should be happy with the sweater or something like that for Christmas, and just be happy that you have a family and a roof over your head and food in your mouth. But this country really needs prayer. It says in the word that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek my face and pray, turn from their wicked ways, that he will hear from heaven and heal our land. And America needs deliverance and healing worse than at any other time. But I see people on TV, and they're waving their finger. They get their finger out. Well, if you think I'm going to join up, you have another thing coming. If you think that I'm going to join, well, you got another thing coming, because when the draft hits, they're going to take whomever they want. These elites, they don't care. They don't care if you go out in the street and blow whistles and wave signs. They do not care. And they have imported people into this country that will be oh so happy to thump heads when the time comes. And it saddens me because you all bought the lie. You all bought into the lie that this joker that we have now, who's been a consummate liar for 50 years of his very, his very so-so mediocre career, and he's been an accomplished liar for 50 years, and you all are treating his words like they're, the word of God coming down from Mount Sinai, when he's broken virtually every promise that he's ever made. And you're like, well, he'll tell the truth this time. He'll do it this time. No, it's not ever going to happen, because these elites, they're so used to lying that they can't even believe the truth themselves. And that's why they make all the wrong decisions, because their decisions are based on a lie. They believe that if they sell this country out to a global third party, that they'll have a place in the new order. And they're fools themselves, because the people from the global new order, they're not going to give these people a place of preeminence in the new order, because why would you give somebody who betrayed his own country a place of honor in the new system? It's not going to happen. They're just useful idiots. They're useful idiots, and they're marching us right to the brink of destruction in this country. I'm sorry to tell you. And you're out there, and you're marching and you're blowing whistles for the Ishmaelites, and you're saying that you demand this and you demand that. The word Islam means submit. And when there's enough of these people in America, you're going to see no-go zones every place around this country, like they have in Minnesota and Montana and New York already. There are no-go zones unless you're Muslim, that you can't go through these places. That's going to happen all through the country, and I can see it coming. I can see Sharia law in America in probably 5 to 10 years at the most. And you people that are marching with your pride flags, these are the very same people that you're screaming and yelling for, that throw gay people off the top of buildings in the Middle East. They take them up to the top of a building and toss them off, or they hang them and they let them dangle there for everybody to see. I saw a video recently of 2 teenage boys in the Middle East, and they were gay. They got convicted of blasphemy, which is a DEATH sentence. And they took 2 cranes and they lifted the boys up on the cranes by their necks, and they just let them hang there and flop in the wind as a warning to other people not to do the down low, not to use your butt for a vagina and your mouth as a urinal. So if you think that marching and all of that is going to give you freedom, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm sorry to tell you, because these global elites do not care if you march. and they want control over you. They want controlled anarchy. They want everybody at each other's throats so that they can do their dirty work. And then eventually they're going to wipe out the people that they empowered. World War I was planned, WW2 was planned, and they have a plan for WW3 to depopulate the world. And they're even trying to uncover that continent that's in Antarctica so that they can wipe out every populated place and start fresh all over with this great big landmass that's under Antarctica. And see, these people think so far out the box. They think like a James Bond movie that the normal person wouldn't even consider that it was possible, how they're using things like CERN to affect Earth's magnetic core and the floating magma and everything that we're floating along on the surface of the Earth. So, for example, when I moved here almost 12 years ago, the street that I live on, if you took a compass, it was due north and due south. Now, if you take a compass and go outside, it's like 15 degrees west that it's drifted. And the sun is in the wrong position at night. At night, it'll be like 6:30 at night, 7 o'clock at night, and the sun will be almost directly overhead like a noonday sun. And I believe that they're literally towing the land masses into different areas on the planet so that they can resurrect this landmass under Antarctica. I know that sounds extreme, but they're able to do it. They're using HAARP. They're using HAARP to push the world's ionosphere out into space to affect time. And what that puts us at risk is that the solar winds can carry away Earth's water, because you have to have a magnetic field to a planet in order for there to be water on the surface of that planet. I personally believe that when we finally make it to Mars, we're going to find out that Mars was already populated at one time, and that Mars had a great big WAR, and that mankind reached out from Mars into outer space and came to Earth. And now we're messing Earth up, and we have to move on to other places. And there are other systems that they believe could support life with a little bit of help. But see, if we were really smart, and a powerful man stood up and said that he was going to bomb another person's country, or, he was going to nuke somebody or start a WAR, instead of the population suffering, they would take that man out of office and keep him, from riding around with the football with his finger on the button, ready to annihilate all of us. That's what they would do if they were smart. But you always have these elites, and they do what my father used to talk about. My father said, if you impoverish the people, and then you give a few of them a uniform to wear, a weapon to hold in their hands, a full belly, and somebody to hate. If you give them those four things, you can control a great big amount of the population as a dictator. And don't kid yourself, fam. we already have a banana republic. America was founded as a constitutional republic. It was not founded as a democracy. A democracy is mob rule, which is what we have now. Every time you turn around, people are outside marching and blowing whistles and setting fire to stuff and breaking windows and stuff like that. And that's exactly what the elite want. They want that stuff so that they can do their dirty deeds and not have attention drawn to them. And if you give them too much of a hard time, they just conscript you and send you off to some foreign country to get all shot up and get your hands and your feet and your legs blown off. And then you come back to this country because you thought you were doing the right thing, defending our freedoms, and you wind up, you can't get a job, you can't get retrained, and you become part of the 40,000. You become part of the 40,000 of the veterans that are on the streets of America, sitting in wheelchairs and camping out in tents, when we're sending billions of dollars all around the world, and we're not taking care of these 40,000 people that deserve to have a roof over their head and deserve to have health care and deserve to have a steady meal, all of that other stuff that they're not getting. And it's a shame. And they've let all of this fentanyl into the country, and people are walking around like zombies, and they're letting them take this horse tranquilizer, and they're getting these great big sores all over their legs and their arms, and they walk around like zombies with great big sores. That's horrible. I never thought that I would live to see the day. I was born into an America where we were the most polite people. We had a reputation for being polite. We were rich. We had nice cars, good jobs. This nation was blessed by God. And Madalyn Murray O'Hair started the ball rolling by getting prayer removed from school in 1963. And then we had the hippie movement, and everybody decided to, wear these ragtag clothes and dress like rag pickers. I never did. When the hippie movement started, I was wearing a shirt and tie to school or a sports shirt. And I didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. All of the other kids were driving Lincoln Continentals and Cadillacs. And I was driving a 64 Ford Falcon convertible. And I had to put a brick under the tire to keep the car from rolling away when I parked it. So I went to the hippie school, and my friends went to the high dollar school, Walt Whitman, with their Lincolns and their Cadillacs. I dated an African American girl named Holly who sang opera, most beautiful woman that I'd ever seen in my life, with a beautiful voice. And we were not allowed to go to the graduation together. They paired her with a black guy, and they paired me with this runny-nosed, whiny little white girl who always had a Kleenex up around her nose and complained about everything. And her mother was no better. Her mother was, oh my gosh. When I dropped her off early that night, I was so happy to be rid of them. And I never got back in touch with them or gave them my phone number or anything. The mother made me buy the $155 picture set for the graduation because she wanted to give the pictures out to her friends to prove that her plain Jane daughter could get a date for the prom. But see, it was all set up by other people. I didn't have any choice in the say. So if you think that hey Kenzie, if you think that racism is long gone, no. When I grew up, they had separate beaches, they had separate amusement parks. We used to go to Glen Echo, which was white only. We went to a white only beach, and karma really bit us in the ass because when we came home, this was 1959. We came home, my brother and I were burned so bad we had these bubbles on our skin, just like crispy bacon that was fried up with the bubbles on it. And my mother wrapped us in Noxzema, cold cream, and clean white sheets to absorb all the goo from the burns. And the next day, my brother was out on the back porch eating a grilled cheese sandwich like a little squirrel, trying to keep to himself and not be bothered by anybody. And my father came out and he put some Old Spice cologne in his hand and he slapped it on my brother's sunburn on his stomach and his chest. And my brother threw the sandwich up into the air and screamed like an old woman, "Ah!" and ran out the room. And so my father turned to me. I was still a toddler back in 1959. And he was like, "Come here, boy." I was like, "No." "Come here, boy." "No." "I'm your father." "Yes." No, it's not a repeat message from yesterday. It's just that things have progressed. Things have progressed along. And I may have repeated a couple of things. I have a lot of newbies to the channel, and they'll ask me what's going on. Does that meet with your satisfaction and approval? Or what would you? Earlier in the video, I was talking about City Prepper's channel because he did an excellent video on how to survive atomic fallout. So that's what I was originally talking about. And then other people joined in and I said hi, and that's where we're at right now. But I don't want anybody to waste their time, with old Pop. This is just a hangout video because so much is going on in the world and everything is doom and gloom. Why not hang out with my peeps? So that's where we're at. I watched Canadian Prepper and I watched Luis Santiago's channel. And Luis has got a good channel, a news channel, and he updates the news every 45 minutes. He's got a speech impediment, so if you go to his channel, please don't make fun of him. And I watched Redacted. Redacted had an excellent video this morning. And then I watched Poplar Preparedness, Steve Poplar. The regular news isn't going to tell you the truth. So I watched those channels, and I watched Wehan, which is the Indian news, because they're going to tell it like it is. Redacted was talking about how Uncle Joe is going to renew the draft. And you young people better keep your grades up and make sure that you stay in college. Broly, I don't jump through any hoops for somebody to sub to me. That's actually against YouTube's terms of service. So, I'm the better part of a century old. And as far as me bending down and kissing somebody's butt for something, those days are long gone. If you want to sub. If you don't, well, you say I look like a nice guy. I'm a sinner saved by grace. Only God is good. So anytime you put a person on a pedestal, sooner or later they're going to disappoint you. When I had an accident and I was really hanging on to life by a thread, my brother betrayed me because I had a life insurance policy that was made out very foolishly directly to my brother and sister-in-law, and they wanted to buy a new house. And so 2:00 in the morning, I got clots in my lungs, and my brother would not call an ambulance. I had to crawl along the floor and reach up to the phone at 2:00 in the morning and call an ambulance for myself, crawl out to the door. And I was so far gone, they couldn't even lie me down in the ambulance. They sat me up in a chair with seat belts around me so that the clots wouldn't go to my brain and finish the job off. And my brother and my sister-in-law were upstairs discussing how they were going to spend the money for my insurance policy. So I haven't talked to my brother in 15 years or so. Don't intend to. He and his wife together, they were like the most wicked people that I'd ever encountered. I would sit in the corner of the basement and pray quietly. He came by and he slapped my hands apart and he said, "Don't do that in my house." So it was a dark time for me. I had to call the bank and tell the bank I was too sick to drive the car, and I was too sick to work and pay for the car, and for them to come and repossess the car. I went outside to take the tags off and send them back to the MVA, and the shadow came up behind me. It was my brother. He said, "Well, a-hole." He didn't say a-hole. He said the whole word. He said, "Well, a-hole, you're sick, getting ready to DIE, and they're taking your car away. Where is your God now?" And I told him, I said, "My God can heal me, and my God can give me a new car and a new place to stay." And my old boss, Mr. Sam, God bless him, he called me up out of the blue. I have no idea how he even got the phone number for me. He said, "If you come back to work for me, I'll get you a place of your own and buy you a brand new car." So he took me down to Academy Ford in Beltsville, Mr. Lynch's dealership. Mr. Lynch was having a bad day, and when I met him, he turned out to be one of the rudest people I'd ever met in my life, as we were trying to buy a car there. And my boss picked out a $26,000 top of the line sedan, a Crown Vic or a Taurus, something like that. I went to a $10,000 Ford Contour, which was the ugliest car I'd ever seen in my life. And then a man backed out a cute little Ford Focus, and the Ford Focus was $14,000 at the time, and we ended up buying the Ford Focus. Now, Academy Service Department is excellent, the nicest people on the planet, but Mr. Lynch, the owner, was one of the meanest, grumpiest people that I had ever met, and I had interaction with him a couple of times because my company bought a car from him, and I gave him a good quote on their trash service and recycling. And instead of doing the honest thing and dealing with me, he took my numbers and shopped them to the company that they were already dealing with. And my thing with him was like, well, if I hadn't come along and give you the quote, you'd still be paying the other company too much money. So why have you got this loyalty to them? I'm the one buying a car from you, and I'm the one who gave you a fair quote. And I didn't ask him what he was paying. I just told him what I would charge if I did the work. You know, I did business straight up. When I sold cars, I was fair with people, you know. I never asked anybody what they were paying and then, you know, did dirty business that way, trying to undercut somebody. I was like, well, they charge this, I charge that. You don't even have to tell me what you're paying. And if you're a customer, you are. If you're not, you're not. So, you know, it keeps, when you don't lie, fam, when you don't lie and you're not dishonest, it makes life very easy and simple. If you start lying and you're dishonest, then you have to remember the last lie you told, and you have to remember to be crafty and dishonest. You notice these politicians up on the Hill, they're not doing any good work for the citizens of this country. Every mistake that they make, they blame on Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been out of office for a long time, and he left the country in good shape economically and everything else. But he's the devil, according to these people, and they've slandered him. They told lies about him getting with a porn star. Donald Trump is a germaphobe. If you watch him at a meeting and they have an open glass of water, he won't drink out of the open glass of water because he's smart. He always gets a bottle of water that's never been opened by anybody else. He cracks it open and he'll drink out of the bottle of water because he knows very likely somebody has spit into the glass of water. And when he goes out to eat, he doesn't order food. He takes the food that's already been made sitting on a shelf waiting for anybody. He's very smart that way. And I guarantee you, there's no way a man like that kissed on a porn star that's had more peckers in her mouth than a chicken farm. You know, I'm just saying, there's no way that he kissed on that lady. And this is adult video. I will put an adult caution on it. And my channel is family oriented, but I'm just being real with you, you know, that Donald does not do the down low. So, but people accuse him anyway. It's very hard. It's very hard being in the public eye, and people want to stir you up and say, well, you know, you're going to have to do this, you know, for me to do that. Great Fuzz Guy, how you doing? So that's a cool handle. And when you all like and subscribe to any channel, it helps that person keep from being harassed by the YouTube thought police. And then you'll see a channel disappear every so often. And that's a shame. It happens. It happens when people get harassed, like Fat Boy Bodybuilder. Fat Boy Bodybuilder was a real cool dude, and he had ADHD, and people harassed him, and he just stopped posting. And he was a really nice guy, and he worked for a restaurant. And they did foul stuff to him. Like he had ordered a pizza for his dinner, and the lady did something like threw the box, and part of his food went on the floor, and they teased him and everything, you know, to where the guy was crying. So you can destroy people. You can destroy people. You can't destroy me because I've got the Holy Spirit of God in me. So Christians can be oppressed by the devil, but we can't be possessed. So that's the advantage of having the Holy Spirit of God in you, is that you can love on people who are hateful anyway, because God says that heaps coals of fire on their heads, on the people that are doing that stuff. And eventually they get theirs. I've known so many people who have come to me and said, well, I don't know why God is doing this to me. Everything is just falling apart. It's because you nasty, and you sowed the seeds, and the seeds have grown up and come back to bite you in the ass. So be very careful with your words and your actions and your deeds. It says that we are surrounded. It says in the Word of God that we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, and it's intimating that there's another dimension that takes place in the same time that we are in, and that we're surrounded by all of these spirit beings that would freak you out if you could see them. But that's why when somebody KILLS somebody else, and they mop the floor up with bleach, and they burn the clothes, and they do this and they do that, and they still get found out, it's because that the blood of that person literally cries from the ground up to God for justice. And mankind cannot give justice. God will. One day every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God. And the earlier you find out in life, the better you are. So for my peeps, I'm going to give you a blessing, and then I'm going to sign off. May the Lord God richly bless you, make his face shine upon you. I pray that he'll bless you physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially, even as your soul prospers. And that's the key, is you want your soul to prosper and grow in the Lord. Poppity Pops out.